Well, that intro never gets old, and the SCC never gets old. It is Finch here, and I'm excited as always for another day of this SCC action. We're in North America specifically today, and we're going to be having a pretty good set lined up for you all as well. Now, I'm not going to break everything down alone, and thank goodness for that. I've got Miff right here next to me to go
Swag.
through
Oh.
all of this XCC action with me. Miff, as I said, I desperately need you here, bud. How are you feeling for the SCC today?
Well, as you already highlighted, man, it is always a treat to get to watch these guys play. I think SCC almost might even be a disservice, right? This is just like SPL of days gone past, right? I mean, we got just huge name recognition in both regions. It's always a treat.
Yeah, and in this match as well, right? I mean, we've got the Herculean Hoops. This is the Aqua, Baskin, Mass, Geno, Snoopy squad. On the other side, you've got the Winter Dogs, and that's Anninster's team. So you're exactly right, right? These teams have a whole bunch of recognizable names and talent on them that you'll definitely recognize here. And you'll recognize from all these other weeks in the SCC. You've been following along at home, I have to assume. And if not, well, then what a great time you picked to suddenly hop on in, despite all the talent on this Hoofs roster. It's been a bit of a struggle at the start of this phase for them, but looks like they're in the middle of turning things around here, Miff. So, yeah, they're about as fun a team to watch as anyone else.
Yeah, I think that this Hoof squad, and if you guys are forgetting what they were called last year, that is Baskin and the boys, has struggled, and that is wild to think about. Last year we saw them go nigh undefeated for an entire year. Now, kind of finally starting to get their feet under them, a couple wins under their belts recently, but this roster has largely not changed. It is the same boys through and through, only one change so far, and I believe that is a pickup for not Geno in the support role, was someone else last year. Look, I think that this team is going to be able to get their feet under them pretty easily going forward, but it is a rough start. There's nothing to be squandered about that. They really have not had the best start to the year so far, which is going to affect their standings throughout the next couple weeks.
Well, Miff, good idea. Let's go ahead and take a look at those standings then and see exactly where everyone lines up here at the start of the SCC. The Artisans, the Sino-led boys, all the way up at the top. The Hoofs 2 and 3, and the Winter Dogs struggling at 1 and 4. But as we said, we've kind of seen the Hoofs, it feels like, turn a bit of a corner here recently, and maybe they can find a way to start catching up. It's going to be difficult to ever catch up to the Artisans and the Sharks. You'd need them to start helping out a little bit with a couple of losses, but maybe the Hoofs can provide one of those themselves once they get a matchup up against the Artisans or the Tiburones and try and slow them down. That is not for today, though. For today, they'll be playing against the Winter Dogs, who, as we already said, alongside the Fishies, have not been able to get a whole lot of wins all in a row, or really multiple wins at all, but they're going to be able to start now up against the Hooves, who've looked mortal, who've looked beatable recently, right? Certainly a team I think the Winter Dogs are capable of taking. Let's move on to the actual schedules to see which matches are up today, and then which ones you're going to want to tune in on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 11 a.m. to watch. On Friday, which is today, it's Winter Dogs Herculean Hoofs. Tomorrow, Pandemonium Just F6 at 11 a.m. And then same on Sunday for Fishies and Sturdy Artisans, where we'll get to see the top and the bottom in the NASCC battle out. So make sure you check in before SPL on all of those days so you can keep up with the XCC action before we hop into the SPL at 1 p.m. Eastern for the day.
Well, so far, I think it's going to be pretty good action through and through, Finch. Look, I think I'm pretty excited for that top versus bottom matchup coming up on Sunday, man. Anytime I get to watch my boy Oceans stand up against some of these best players we've ever seen, Sino out of the jungle, Eonic coming back into the support role, going to be an incredibly exciting set. But for now, I think we got to hone in on what's actually happening, what the fans at home can watch today, which is going to be a battle of the middle, right? A battle of evenly matched teams inside of that center of the squad. I really am excited. And I think it's going to come down to this jungle matchup in particular, Masked up against Anninster, one you got to really keep your eyes on.
Yeah, and to talk a bit about Andy, he's going to be really critical for this team to be successful, right? I mean, I think whenever Andy is on a team, that's just likely going to end up being the case. But in particular, I'm thinking so here, where he's kind of leading, Crimson, who's a bit newer here, but he's got plenty of backup too in Aqua and Gamma, who have been playing really well around them. So I think as long as they can count on Annister to be that consistent source of pressure out of the jungle and then that vocal leader in comms, this team can always be a threat to start turning things around. And even here today up against the Hoofs.
Yeah, I think that Anitzer really is the core of aggression for this squad
Gross.
because this is a team that has been described in the past as gas pedal from minute zero, and if it doesn't work, we lose, right? Winter Dogs has generally played around this early aggression. Even out of the support role, we see picks like this tier looking for tower dives between the 1 and 2 in mid at the 9-minute mark. That's what we just saw. And if that works out for them, they are generally able to transition it into a mid-game lead, and then from there, just able to go towards the Gold Furies or the Pyromancers on the match. Or, if they don't have it pan out in the first 10 or so minutes, we have seen the squad really struggle to get it together in that mid-game phase.
And that's what the Herculean Hoofs are going to have to contend with, this early unbridled aggression from a squad that is a mix of the old and new in terms of the talent that make up that roster. So a scary prospect for the Hoofs, but maybe not if they have finally started to find their flow. We knew at this Herculean Hoofs team had too much raw talent to just not keep winning for too long, right? Eventually they were going to turn that around. There's some teams in the SPL that I think we could describe similarly, right? Like the Titans and the Warriors, who eventually, I think those guys could trip into a couple of dubs back to back because those guys are just too strong talented-wise. And I think the same case here for the Hoofs. And you mentioned how the junglers are always going to be important in this one. So talk to me a bit about what Mask's going to have to do in this jungle if he wants this team to start putting some W's in the win column.
Finch, generally it is the junglers, and you're right to ask, but Mast really is only there to facilitate Woundy Kim, the young Bastion out of mid, right? This guy, thank God to all the other Smite fans at home and those who are playing ranked, that Baskin treats this as a hobby and not a career path, or maybe no one else would be able to find a dub inside the battleground. But you know what? I'm going to let my jungler bias flow through for a moment here, and we'll focus in on Mast. I think that he is a player that really does do well in that mid-game phase. Generally, when you think of junglers, are they an early-game aggressor? Do they play that late-game hypercarry? Mast finds himself somewhere in the middle, takes those picks like Robin and Ratatasker, and is able to control the pace once he gets a couple items under his belt. And if he does buy his team another 5-6 minutes after that 10-minute mark, well, you've got the win condition Baskin in the wings.
And that is a win condition at almost all times, isn't it? What Baskin can do for you in just about any role, over in solo or in the mid role, wherever it is this guy feels like playing at the time. He has that ability to take over the map. But I think he does still have, some good backup flanking him. You already talked a bit about Mass, but I think Gino going to be critical in this matchup as well. And we go right into a Geno clip at the start of it. This guy, I've thought for a long time now, was good enough to be the next guy up to come to the SPL. If there was an opening, if there was a team that thought they could do a little bit better at that support role, then I think this is the guy they were often looking at to try and do that role. But I think it's just not really what he wanted. He's very happy playing down here with this squad, so they're going to need to see if they can find a way to turn it around because they've got so much talent on this squad.
They do, but you got to give some shout-outs to Meerkat as well. Last year was playing that ADC role, now replaced by Snoopy, now shifting back over to solo, which is something he's been able to do in the past. There's a little meme around the young man. Soloed by Meerkat's been a thing for going on 4 years now because of how long he's been able to play inside of it. I'm really excited to watch these guys play because we don't know what version of the Hoofs we're going to get today. Is it going to be the squad that's been struggling to find a win in the early parts of the season? Is it going to be the squad that's really got their stuff together and is able to play as that 5-man unit? Or is it just going to be Baskin showing up and winning on his own regardless?
Yeah, if you're the Winter Dogs, you're hoping it's that one where maybe they're not in sync and they weren't able to get a scrim or two in this week and they're coming in a little slower than normally, because that is one of your best options. And not just for this team, for most teams in this SCC writ large would have a much better shot if the Herculean Hoofs come in a little bit under 100%. Because they only need to be close to most of the times be dominant. So this will be a big matchup, and I think we are going to see that soul lane factor in here a bit. You talked about Meerkat and how he'll need to kind of hold his ground. A couple of their sets early on in the phase, Meerkat was struggling to kind of get his feet underneath him. I think that has passed now. He's able to hold his own over there in solo and then start looking for some big rotations to help out in that 3v3. We've seen at both levels, SPL and SCC, when solo laners can get involved in that mid 3v3, they can turn the tide in a pretty big way.
But he does have a tough matchup inside of Aquarius this week. Aquarius is one that has played a very unorthodox solo god pool. We've seen him go towards the Tiamat in some of these matches, and he likes to rotate out almost the second that he can. If he's got boots, if he's got all that movement speed inside of his kit, you better believe he's going to leave that lane at the first opportunity, whether or not Meerkat decides to kind of follow through and try to keep up with his solo laner, or whether or not he decides to sit in lane and try and pull a lead that way. I'm going to be very curious to see.
All right, well, let's hop into those picks and bans then for game number 1. First, see who's picking first. That'll be the Hoofs, and then what tools will they take into battle? We've seen in North America, though, that they do seem perfectly fine to stick to these meta bans for the most part, trying to make sure that some of that real elite stuff, like the Athena, like the Tiamat, isn't allowed through. So they go ahead and ban those two right off the bat. Giannis as well, getting a little bit of respect. Here's the thing about giving that over to Krim in that middle lane is that he'll carry the game, so you got to take it away from him.
Yeah, it makes sense to me, but you could say the same about Baskin's own thoughts, so
It's
maybe
true.
we see the Winter Dogs toss a dedicated respect band that way, but so for now, generally standard. I expect the Hooves to play a little bit more so for that mid-game phase. They don't really need to late-game slant their draft too much because of the style that the Winter Dogs have brought in weeks past. As long as they can bear with it and not fall too far behind in the first 15 minutes, I think that's going to be a very good strategy for them, and getting a Guan Yu for yourself in that first slot, sustain, does help out with some of these elongated matches.
And we were just saying, Meerkat been getting more comfortable over there in solo recently, and give him a pick like Guan Yu, which can not only find pressure over there, but has some pretty meaty rotations once he does start to get involved. I like putting that in his hands. Does mean, though, that you're leaving up Heimdall, selected over on her, I think it's worth noted, who's being considered the top ADC up in the SPL right now. But listen, Heimdall is 1B, a very close 2, something like that, right? I don't think you're very disappointed that Heimdall is going to end up being your first overall pick or your ADC pick.
And when you match it up with Tsukiyomi as well, that pressure out of the jungle should be able to alleviate some of that pressure we might see coming out of the duo if the Hooves elect to pick up on her for themselves. Scylla, on the other hand, is kind of scary, right? Baskin essentially puts a timer on the game. If I get to the 20-minute mark and I'm pretending to be Baskin here, I'm gonna win, right? That's kind of the plan. But Chernobog pickup, global presence, a little bit more so on the menu here than it is that pressure inside a lane on her going by the wayside. Incredibly interesting. I think that on her is by and large one of the best, if not clearly the best ADC right now, but now that one of these teams elect to pick it up.
So passing on here this time, not going to get picked or banned. That'll affect his stats at the very least, but not quite as valued, it seems, in the SCC as it is up there in the SPL. So Chernobog, Scylla, Guan Yu, still a good start to any draft, as is Heimdall, Tsukiyomi, Amir. I think still a bit tough to call exactly who maybe is ahead until we know what Winter Dogs want to play in that middle lane, what they're going to have that's meant to keep up with Scylla output once this game gets to the team fighting stage. So good luck with whoever's job that ends up being. But the Hoofs still not focusing particularly on a mid lane ban in Serket. At this point, the only other mage ban, Tiamat and Giannis, right? So for the most part, I'd be thinking at this point, if you're Crimson, you can play essentially whatever you want. Maybe not Morrigan now that one more does come through, but still got to be feeling like your pool not as cut out as maybe it would be in some other pick ban phases.
But with all that availability available to him, he does elect to go back towards that Merlin. It's something that Crimson has played a fair bit in the last couple of weeks, and it fits well into this draft. Doesn't really need too much secure out of your mid laner because you've got Shards of Ice available from Ymir, so it's going to make up for all that secure inside of burn potential. It should be able to set up for these Gold Furies incredibly easy throughout the early. But the same could be said of the Hoos. If Guan Yu is able to rotate out, Taolu Assault has that defense shred measure. Fenrir, when he's been going for that auto attack centric build, Stone Cutting Sword generally in that first slot. And now some defense shred again from Ganesh's Dharmic Pillars. I think that the Hoos also have some pretty insane burn potential on objectives, but maybe backed up a little bit more so by the secure factor that Scylla brings.
Well, Crimson's going to have to be real good with his beads button in those first 12 levels, though, isn't he, on this Merlin pick? They pick in Thor, which is old school, so Anderson certainly doesn't mind playing. He's got plenty of time on it and still plays it in the SCC this year. It's not a huge surprise there, but I'm really more focused on Krim Med. He's going to have to make sure that Fenrir isn't living in his head rent-free, because Ragnarok, just the leap off the stun, going to cause problems for him, too. Even Brutalize. I don't really know how Krim reliably gets away from this Fenrir in the jungle at this point, until maybe he has Aegis or something like that, because my man's going to be in trouble.
Yeah, well, maybe he's just hoping that there's a stun from the Thor to stop the Brutalize, or maybe a Ymir freeze.
Please help.
He's going to be very reliant on his team. Anybody else but not me, I cannot do it on my own, says Crimson. But I think that they do have the ability, the Winter Dogs that is, to fight into the early. I mean, big surprise, right? That's their strategy almost always. Thor out of the jungle, yeah. Tsukiyomi out of solo. Both should be able to find pressure relatively easily. And then even that duo lane should be able to fight in really well.
Should be a good one, though, with plenty of early action. Hoofs and Winter Dogs. Let's go into game number 1.
That's right, Finch. I'm excited to be able to bring it to you here. Got aggro on my side. Gormizer bringing the play-by-play for this one. Of course, Doug's is the eyes and ears for everything that we're going to see. And aggro, I'm pretty excited for this one. I mean, Herculean Hoofs did not have the start early on that they really wanted, and things took a little while to get going for them, but it does seem like they finally settled into that rhythm, got their groove going. The same can sort of be said for Winter Dogs here, but I think the Hoofs, especially considering the roster that they brought into it, kind of had a lot more expectations for them coming into this season.
Yeah, no doubt. I think everyone did, themselves included, I would assume. But you know, here we are. You can't change the past, so you just gotta keep on moving with what you have. And what you have now for Herculean Hoofs is must wins, probably throughout from here, because you can assume that the Tiburones are gonna keep doing well. You can assume the Sturdy Artisans are gonna keep doing well. And if you want to break into that top two, you're going to need to essentially run the table if you're the Hoofs and look good up against those top two teams as well.
Right now, Gino's in a little bit of trouble. Looks like he's going to be able to sneak out of that one, but Snoopy can't quite say the same. Gamma going with the start we've seen out of Genetics on this Ymir. The boots too, foregoing that starter item. Chased him down with that movement speed. It doesn't look like it's going to get a kill just yet. This dual lane seems ready to pop off at any moment. But finally, gonna pump the brakes. It seems like Gamma and Yuji are gonna back off.
Well, 3 beads are expended in that exchange. Both Gino and Snoopy use their purification beads. Yeah, that's right. Gino has some as well. And Yuji uses his. I liked the decision from Yuji for sure. I mean, just beads that Ganesh dash in and start swinging, because you're going to be able to put out a lot of damage. You know that Ganesh doesn't have a shell or anything like that, that he's holding all that damage. And Gino instantly realizes his mistake, and then Snoopy kind of gets punished for Gino's mistake because he's got to body block some autos and body block some abilities from that Ymir, and ultimately ends up costing him his purification beads as well. So a good scrap over there by the Winter Dogs. Likely that they won't get punished for it on the Hoof side, because Andinster will be hitting 5 right around when these beads come up off cooldown, if I had to guess.
Gamma looking to get aggressive again. Those vines causing a little bit of trouble for Baskin and Mask, although a leap and then I guess technically a dash going under the ground there for Baskin gets them out of any trouble. And level 5 is going to be the big deal, right? I mean, you look at Andy on Thor, you look at this Fenrir on for Mask, it's going to be a monumental occasion, at least it feels like, for both of these teams, depending on where they put that pressure. And we've been having this conversation a lot. Normally it's against Baskin that we're having it, though, where, you know, he's picking things like Thoth, Merlin, anything you can think of that's relatively easy to lock down up against a Fenrir. This time it's going to be Crimson on this Merlin. Has the beads available, but do you think that's a spot where Mast is going to be able to focus down and find a lot of pressure?
Absolutely. I mean, when you're picking this Fenrir pick, you're looking for squishies with your first and third abilities, and then tanks with your ultimate the vast majority of the time, because they're less likely to have beads or any sort of CC immunity. But that's not the case here, as nice blue buff steal coming from Andinster is going to put Meerkat in an awkward position. He's not going to die, but losing that blue buff as Guan never feels particularly good. But in this game where every member of the Winter Dogs has purification beads to start off, Mask is going to have to get some help in order for that ultimate to be impactful. So if I'm him, I'm just saying, fine, I'll just use my ultimate for damage more often than not, and the best way to do that is to set up a camp in the mid lane around Baskin and on the character that doesn't have any CC immunity built into the kit. It's only the beads for Crim.
It'll be exciting to watch how they handle that one as time goes on. Aggression right now seems to be the way, I guess, double for you, right? You get to come in and have your counterpart at least manifest in the face of the Winter Dogs as of right now. They really want to fight, and that's all they have their mind on. Andy, now he's ticked over to 5. He's going to back one more time. I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to bring to it. That Anvil of Dawn has not been really prominent here in Season 8. I mean, Thor, considering what we saw out of him literally every other year combined, I think he has, if I remember correctly, like the most plays across the SPL. And like things like that typically make you want to see him a little more often. Of course, he's got, you know, the luck behind him of being in the game the longest compared to some of the other gods, and he's going to get aggressive now. So far, no ult, just a little bit of damage there on the Mask, and some focus onto the Hoofs mid lane.
Yeah, I think you're right. When we looked it up, it was the most plays at SPL history. Thor definitely near the top, but this season, I don't think itemization really favors him that much. I mean, the cooldown and pen are both pretty decent in the meta right now, but hybrid Thor doesn't always feel that good. It can when it has a lead. That's why sometimes you see Thor in solo lane go a little bit more hybrid, but it just hasn't felt like he's doing quite enough in the damage department to warrant how all-in he can be.
Well, now it's going to be a little bit of aggression from him. Anvil of Dawn comes down. Dharmic Pillars are up. When he's going to be dead just yet, Aquarius is going to be the one taking a little bit more damage here than he favored on the Tsukuyomi. Going low, but he is fighting back for this. No backup coming for him. But maybe something that could have been turned around finally falls down in the blue buff of the Herculean Hoofs. And first blood will be scooped up there for Meerkat.
Really, really nice Dharmic Pillars from Gino in that engagement. Put it right on Anditser's head, instantly dashed him, forced the beads, and forced Andy back because he knew that he was going to take too much damage after getting his prots shredded by that Dharmic Pillars. And that shouldn't be any surprise. Gino's Ganesh was very, very potent at the very beginning of last year when he was in the SCC. Ended up getting banned quite a bit from that team because teams were just not sure what else to ban against them, and Gino looked so consistently good on this pick that it really warrants it.
I mean, just shots galore. I don't want to change the subject, but Snoopy just finding consistent shot after shot there on the Yuji, even though Yuji had a lot of the pressure over here early on. Just goes to show he hasn't lost it as of yet. Looks like he's going to be going back. We've been seeing a lot of, like, boots are still coming online for a lot of these people. I think actually the Hunters, the last ones to pick them up here. But we've been having that conversation. Dave and I had it a little bit yesterday, that conversation of Executioner versus Wind Demon first, where we've been seeing it. But Chernobog hasn't been, like, he was very prominent for a few weeks of the SCC, then he disappeared for a few weeks when the SBL reintroduced, and it feels like Snoopy, even last year he was going back to this Chernobog, so it makes sense for him to be playing it now. But does he fit well with that crit build that has been going on, or does he want to go a different route?
No, I like Chernobog with the crit build quite a bit because a lot of times you're diving into outnumbered scenarios. You know, you're taking a risky ultimate pathing into the backline. You just get direct access to the enemy squishies, so you want the fastest DPS on those squishies as possible, and that's going to be crit once you get a high enough crit percentage. You can go with a lot of different builds in that way. You can go something like the Fail Not, though we don't see that very often anymore, but that used to be a core item on Chernobog because of that ultimate synergy that he would have. I like it quite a bit here for the Chernobog, and I like Snoopy on the Chernobog because, as you mentioned, this is kind of a signature pick for him at this point. He has played this pick a ton during his SCC and SPL career and has always looked very, very comfortable on it.
If he continues hitting autos the way he did over there in that last trade, then I expect he's going to be able to get a lot of utility out of that crit as well. So it'll be fun to watch, but it looks like Yuji maybe learned his lesson a little bit earlier on. Isn't going to be taking the fight to him. It's been relatively slow. I mean, one kill overall with these junglers I didn't expect to happen. Mass looking for a little bit of blood, but everybody's responding very easily to these calls from the other team. Every time you see someone get aggressive, almost immediately the other team is retreating to stay safe. There haven't been a lot of invades. I don't know that there's going to be a lot. I wanted to see something out of Gino, but it looks like he's just going to be chilling over here. They're setting up for a kill, or at least for the mid camps, and those vines coming up. Perfect timing on them. Of course, with the Harpies, it's a lot easier to just scoop them up if you're already in position there for the Hoofs. So, a small lead. What is it? 300 gold separating these two teams. Not as explosive as I kind of expected coming into today.
Especially considering how the Winter Dogs normally play, which is fast and loose. They are down to get dirty in the enemy jungle at any given point, as Gamma doesn't use the Purification Beads. Thought he might get rooted there by Snoopy, but instead just takes about a third of his life away. This is definitely not the status quo for the Winter Dogs. They had just one blue buff invade go poorly on the right-hand side, and it wasn't even that badly. I mean, they lost Beads and Aqua for First Blood, and ever since, they just haven't been willing to be aggressive, not only on this side of the map, but on any side of the map, which is a little bit surprising based on their usual tendencies. Maybe trying to bring a different dynamic to the way they play the game, but I don't know that that's the best strategy up against the Herculean Hoofs, who normally like to play it a little bit slower, like to slow the pace of the game down a little bit, and get to the team fighting phase and just out-mechanic you. Now that game plan hasn't worked super well so far this year, and that explains their record, but it is still their primary game plan, I would say. So Winter Dogs may be playing a little bit into the strength of what the Hoofs normally like to do.
Well, they're going in on Baskin. There's going to be the double tap from the hammer, but it's Gamma who's going to be caught out. Dharmic Pillars come through. You're going to take a lot of damage from that one. Locked down so many ults just to kill off the support, but they find him. Now Snoopy coming into the back line the same way you
Nice
had
dash.
it, and dodges the Anvil of Dawn into the wall. Finds a couple of shots there onto Andy for his trouble. They only get one kill. They look good doing it.
Yeah, a lot of nice little mechanical plays there between Gino and Snoopy, but ultimately only ends up getting the support, and no Gold Fury for them to take because they haven't taken the Gorps. So little bit of disappointing outcome for what was a pretty solid engagement. I liked the idea. I thought they found the right window, but good spacing by the Winter Dogs made it so that there wasn't a whole lot of recourse except for killing Gamma.
I really like the idea, though, Snoopy being able to dodge out using his beads. If any wall is nearby for that dash, it's going to be really timing dependent and heavy, but it's definitely something I hope to see more of. That's always a nice little play, and of course I think it makes Andister feel not useless, but definitely not as useful as a Thor can be. This is already a slow start. I anticipated seeing a little bit more out of the Fenrir. I think there was pretty heavy investment just to killing off Gamma, but at this point with only 2 kills on the board, it's probably worthwhile for him. But if you're not able to find much in return, you know, Gamma doesn't necessarily have the biggest team fight utility ultimate. Andy is kind of the pinnacle of engage for this team until Aqua starts rotating over. As of now, it kind of feels like they haven't been able to quite catch the wave that they want to ride in on these fights.
They've got pretty clear engage once the 5-on-5 start, though. I mean, they've got excellent poke damage between the Tsukiyomi and the Thor. They're going to be able to keep everybody at a range. You've got the wall from Gamma. You've got easy ways to engage these fights if you're the Winter Dogs whenever you start to group up. But you have to worry about the healing on the other side from Meerkat on this Guan Yu. Just so good up against all that poke is having consistent sustain, and Guan Yu's Conviction Heal definitely fits that bill.
Whew, Gino takes a huge chunk of damage there. Not having any prots online. Throws the Dharmic Pillars up here for the Oracle Harpies. They're going to be able to confirm that one, no problem. Nice little zoning tool. Does that leave this Gold Fury open? The Winter Dogs seem to think so. Snoopy turns around and spots it out, so they're going to be able to reply here. The stun from Andy going to be just off the mark. He's going to create a wall for them, and there's a second one from the Emir, trying to create some space. Up into the sky goes Andister. Question is, where is he going to land? Who does he want to go on? That's going to be jumping in. Andy comes straight back down, so that ult is for naught. I feel like the Gold Fury is going to be at pause for now, but Meerkat has a different idea. Wants to engage, blinks forward. It's going to be the Herculean who's starting it up. Baskin still has ult for secure. The Winter Dogs just trying to ward them away at this point.
I mean, Gino's ultimate going to be the first one coming up of those used, but still a ways away. Meerkat ended up taking a little bit too much damage despite the healing coming from him as well. So I don't mind that call to back up from the Hoofs. They did have the better secure, but don't have a couple ultimates on their side. A little bit of a risky fight because of all that poke damage that we were just mentioning. Not a bad call to play safe.
Oh, Snoopy in trouble over here. Dashes into the wall, dashes away, seems to be able to escape it, running around the Rosie here with Big Yuji. Seems like he's going to only be able to escape for so long. Big AoE from the sword comes crashing down, finally gets a kill in return. That was going the other way a little bit earlier. Now Yuji with a small lead. Maybe even in items there. No, Wind Demon picked up just now for Snoopy on that. Kind of forced back. Interesting dynamic between these two teams. It feels a lot more, and I feel like we've been using this a little more liberally, but it does feel akin to the SCC in Europe, right? The fights that are happening are still big, monumental fights, but no one's really dying as a result of it, which is just the way these two teams are playing, very safe and a little more defensive. So it's going to be interesting if Winter Dogs pick up the pace. They look to be going in for this Gold Fury again.
They know that Snoopy's just coming back from base. He doesn't quite have his ultimate back up yet, but Baskin is on the way. No, they decided to give it up. There's not enough positioning here for the Hoofs, and that's really credit to Yuji with the solo kill on a Snoopy. He makes this space happen.
Andy's going to get a lot of vision, and he's going to even go in here. Dunks down onto Gino, and quickly reassesses the situation. Snoopy coming right around the corner after he clicked. Decides to hightail it on out of there. Goes for the steal, though, and I have to admire that. where it is literally all beads and Aegis right now. Gamma still needs 2 more levels before he can pick something up to break the streak, but everybody else on Winter Dogs has the exact same relics. They're all off cooldown. That opens up a question mark for Masked, as well as Meerkat, is where they're going to be able to get aggressive and when they're going to be able to get aggressive. So far, the last fight around the Gold Fury that didn't amount to anything was really the only time we've seen them truly clap back. And with a big rotation out of Solo, you'd maybe expect a little more.
Still not quite tanky enough. Meerkat only had the reinforced shoes and the Glad Shield at that point, so not a ton of CDR, no magic defense whatsoever. He's fixed both of those problems nicely with this Genji's Guard. Definitely one of my favorite items on Guan Yu. I think just an insane item on basically every warrior.
Yeah.
You get so much magical protection, CDR, MP5, and flat cooldown reduction whenever you get hit by magical abilities. So that's flat cooldown reduction is insane. You're building CDR anyways on a character like Guan, and now all of a sudden you get to heal. Oh, I got hit by Merlin one. Heal again instantly because we're subtracting 3 seconds from it immediately. So definitely love the pickup there for Meerkat. Makes him a little bit squishy to the front or from the physical damage dealers here of the Winter Dogs. A little surprised he's going into more magic defense at this point.
Oh, he's going to be going in as well. Uses the cavalry charge, looking for the lockdown. Andy makes it up to the sky, though. Aquarius makes it out of there. So there isn't going to be a problem. I was going to mention, you were talking about the CDR. You know, you get 10% from the blue buff. And right on cue, as I was thinking, well, it can't be 20% if you get enhanced. Except it's not going to be Meerkat that's getting that one. The enhanced blue buff on the side of the Winter Dogs here. Both Scorpions have been taken at least once. And every single enhanced diamond that I see on the map is on the side of the Winter Dogs. So even though technically they're behind in kills, and even technically behind in towers, although I don't know if you can count what Meerkat has standing there in his lane as a full tower at all. It's definitely a small lead for them, even though theoretically, numerically, everywhere else they're falling behind.
Still get the feeling that the Hoofs should be able to group up and do a little bit more, but haven't seen it quite yet. It's been the Winter Dogs controlling these objectives, controlling these engagements, really centered around Andenster's Thor walls and making sure that he's getting good poke and CC off. But Baskin's been allowed to free farm for this entire game. I mean, he's got a Rod of Tahuti done already, working towards his 4th item, which will likely be some percent penetration, as he only has that 10% right now. Snoopy's going to be able to put good pressure on the map with this Chernobog and the threat of split pushing and just ulting into any given fight. I'm interested to see how the Winter Dogs are going to be able to convert on this slight bit of map pressure they have so far, because we haven't really seen that true 5-on-5 quite yet.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing that I was wondering, because you mentioned, like, I think the team fight for the Hoofs, I agree, is going to be something to that's going to be formidable. That's the best way to describe it. We haven't really gotten to see them fight, and now they're starting up the Fire Giant. 18 minutes in, this is what we typically saw last year in the SBL. This is the magic timer. Gamma's going to spot that one out. A good Ganesh silence and pickup, even forcing the beads, but Gamma is incredibly low. Good stun, good ult combo. Baskin gets credit for the kill on that one. Now that I'm a Monster is down, they're going to use it to re-engage on the Fire Giant, but that big burst, secure, is going to be disappeared. It's a 4v5s. The Winter Dogs look to get aggressive. Dharmic Pillars come up for defense in the zone. Same thing for Mass. The Hoofs just pick this one up. They get a kill to boot. It seems like the Winter Dogs didn't know how to crack that eggshell.
I mean, they lose Gamma, but it costs the Hoofs 4 of their 5 ultimates, and the only one left is a Chernobog Global that isn't super effective in narrow corridor fights like what we just saw, but the Hoofs just scared away the Winter Dogs. Without Gamma there to lead the charge, they don't have a true tank on their team composition. I mean, Aquarius is playing Tsukiyomi, which is an assassin, built hybrid, but still not exactly the initiation master. Without those Ymir walls, they didn't feel like they could walk in.
That's created a golden opportunity. Fire Giant, a huge swing, especially in games like this, when there's not a lot of kills on the board, and the only real difference between the teams at the time was about 2,000 gold. This is where things really start to pivot already. They knock down another tower. Again, technically Meerkat's tower exists, and therefore that gold is not on the side of the Winter Dogs. They're going to start a Zoni Fury here in front of the Winter Dogs, or the Herculean Hoofs, and good luck fighting 5-on-5 with a Fire Giant on the other side. They're just going to go ahead and let that one slip. Try to go for a steal, but not able to secure it. Looks looks like the Hoofs are going to be grouping up for a left-hand siege, going down the long lane's tower line. It's going to be a lot of gold in their pocket, and the Winter Dogs might look to defend here.
I don't think this is an end the games type of fire giant. This is a secure the next fire giant type of fire giant, and that's what's going to be important with this one. It's a 4-1 split. Of course, Anderson's going to be able to hover mid and get over to the left-hand fight with that Anvil of Dawn very easily. But the reason that this 4-1 split is good despite that is because of these Oni waves. Mask has one underneath him right now in mid. The Oni wave's coming up left side and right side right now. So this is just putting pressure on that right tier 2 without it needing anybody there, because the Winter Dogs didn't do a good enough job of pushing out that lane before the defense.
And they're getting aggressive. Good wall by Gamma. Keeps the damage separated. Snoopy goes up into the air, so that ult's going to be applying that slow to everybody. Is he going to engage? They're kind of split 2 and 2 right now. Now 3 and 2 as Snoopy lands back down. Looks like he's going to be able to come over here and, well, not quite knocked down a tier 2 in mid. Gets it about 2/3 HP, but Andy just enough with the lack of minions to support them. Finally, the minion wave catches up. They're going to be able to get aggressive. It's going to be Gamma going into the backline. Beat's going to be used by damn near everybody engaged at the very beginning. It's going to cause a little bit of CC, but as of right now, Winter Dogs do manage to save this tier 2. Not for much longer. You're going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more seconds. Finally, knocking that one down, but a lot of effort, a lot of relics used just to get a tier 2. Now they can finally put all that pressure back on left.
And the right side tier 2 didn't even fall. It took about half of its health from that Oni wave, but I think that this should be free from here for the Hoofs. Gamma's pretty far away, but Anderson's lurking and he has that ult.
Oh, and that's just going to be Baskin locking him down. Andy not going to be able to impact this one just yet. Gamma going to be the next target, and a lot of health done halfway down, but not quite enough for the kill. Still get rid of Yuji in the blink of an eye. Andy's coming in behind them as of right now. Looks like he's just trying to find the safest path back to the base. The left Phoenix going to be under siege. Andy's hovering in the jungle of a 16 compared to Mask's 17. They get a stun and a double tap through the wall, but that might have just alerted of everybody where he is. He's going to go up into the sky, just one hit away from death. Baskin not able to lock it down. Snoopy in a little bit of trouble. It's a 3-on-5 until Andy rejoins the fight after healing up a little bit. And that Phoenix is at half health.
Still, the Fire Giant's about to fall off. They have this Guan Yu sustained. That lack of power is going to make it harder.
Oh, they're going in. Beats. Aegis forced out from Andy there. It's going to be enough to keep him alive. Mask kind of in no man's land as of right now. Meerkat taking a lot of damage up front. You had highlighted it, but that Fire Giant buff gone. And that's going to be the go sign. Yuji comes on in. Meerkat looking to turn and peel. Someone's going to come crashing down and go bye-bye. That's going to be Gino. Meerkat locked away, but he's going to use his ult for some disengage and CC immunity. Baskin over the wall, just off the mark with the I'm a Monster. The return damage, return kills onto the Winter Dogs not happening, and they're still running down left right now. Looking for blood. Gamma trying to play catch-up. Doesn't seem like he's going to be able to get there in time. Finally going to call off the onslaught, but they managed to save their Phoenixes. They only lose 2 towers.
And they don't really fall behind by that much. You know, I'm saying that that needs to be a Fire Giant that secures the next Fire Giant. I don't think the Hoofs did enough in order to do that. If they would have cracked the left side Phoenix, that likely would have done it. But only being up 4,000 gold at 23 minutes, I mean, that is a manageable deficit if you're the Winter Dogs. It's not the end-all, be-all from this position. Only a couple level 20s. Snoopy does get to get his Deathbringer before upgrading his starter item, so that's solid.
Woo. A 3-man freeze forces the beads there from Baskin. As well as Mask speed's going to be down, so those are going to be big cooldowns just burned by the Herculean Hoofs to stay alive. Pyromancer turned and burned by the Winter Dogs. Last time around, it was 1 kill onto Gamma, and then a good zone afterward that got the Fire Giant for the Herculean Hoofs. So wouldn't be surprised to see him maybe get that aggressive again. Crimson pushing up the mid lane. The Winter Dogs are trying to figure out the approach they want to take to really get aggressive into this. Right now, though, neutral objectives falling on their side.
They do have this global pressure that the Winter Dogs don't. They have the semi-global in the Thor, but no one can really answer Snoopy's split push on this left-hand side. I mean, Primal Fury's coming up. He can snag that. He could back. He could finish his Ornate Arrow. He's got a lot of options as to what he wants to do right now, but he just doesn't have to be on the right-hand side, hands in pockets, waiting for something to happen. He can be active on the map, which is an advantage that the Winter Dogs don't have.
I mean, being able to follow up exactly what you said. Free farm for him, purple buff if he wants it. He can go get that minion wave and slow it down or speed up. Potential Phoenix sieges for his team. Gonna be the Fire Giant started up by Winter Dogs, so the call's gonna be coming through. Meerkat notices it just now as their ult available. Wall going to keep Meerkat in, but it seems like he wants this fight. Goes under the ult for the CC immunity. Manages to save his beads, but loses that engage for his team. Gino hanging around the area. Fire Giant at about 3/4 HP, maybe 2/3. You can slice it either way. The Winter Dogs are gonna go ahead and call that one back off.
And all the while, Snoopy holds on to that ultimate. He's just pushing on that left-hand side. Knows that he's realistically never going to be able to get that Phoenix, though he would have been able to get some solid damage on it. Aqua only now starting his back. Love the patience there from Snoopy. I think a lot of players would have heard, hey, they're on fire, it's 60%, and just instantly slammed that Chernobog ult button, but decides to play it nice and slow, plays it patiently, and is able to hold off on using that ultimate, which means that we're in a very similar state to what we were 2 minutes ago. Snoopy doesn't have to be here on the right-hand side. He can go back to the left and keep having someone get tethered to that side of the map because no one can easily answer the split push.
Well, they're starting to dance in the Fire Giant pit. Gino throws out, I can't even remember the name of it, just a little bit of damage to try and start up the
It's a turn
FG.
of fate, Gormizer. That's a turn of fate.
You would
that
think
he
that as
throws.
someone who has played as much Ganesh as I have, that I would remember that. But you don't need to know that.
No,
You can
my
hit
brain is
Ohm,
just broken.
and you can hit
my
Dharmic
brain is
Pillars.
just
Those are
broken.
your two abilities.
I can't remember how to do anything in my day-to-day life. I never remember to do anything that I need to do at my house or anything like that. But I will be able to tell you any god ability name at the drop of a hat. I have that going for me.
Turn of Fate. I'll have to memorize that one and keep it going for him. It's main clear. A little bit of damage. We've seen kills come out for less here, but Gino not going to be able to find much off of that one. Gamma's looking for blood, throws up a good wall here, but doesn't really have any follow-up for it. Instead, eats about, let's call it an 1/8 of his HP. Goes back in, looks for a freeze, forces the beads out of Baskin, but now he's in the wrong place, wrong time. The damage is coming through. Baskin kills him, but didn't kill him. Snoopy gets the credit for it. Baskin just off the mark, maybe a little too late on the trigger for that one. Winter Dogs, it's the same story as last time, except this time around the Herculean Hoofs don't quite have the Dharmic Pillars for the zone, so can they maintain the same line of aggression? Make sure they get a Fire Giant. Well, it doesn't seem like they want the Fire Giant as prominently now. They force Andy up into the sky. Mask gets aggressive over there on the left-hand side, trying to get some of this damage done. Find another kill. Andy comes crashing down in the midst of it all. Doesn't seem like they're going to be able to find a kill here. Too timid on the Winter Dogs to go in. Herculean Hoofs turn their eyes right back to the FG.
This time, Frenzy's going to be used by Gino. I'm a monster coming up, but won't be up in time. The Hoofs still secure it.
Mask gets aggressive there on the Crimson, forces the Aegis. The beads were used. They're looking for the chase down, but there's a lot of slows, walls, stuns, what have you coming out here to slow them down. Gino's going to throw the Dharmic Pillars over the wall. It gets a little bit of damage and some slows. And if anything, makes sure that the Winter Dogs are not going to be able to set up for a tier 2 tower defense. The health bars on the tanks are looking a little low. They've got some healing, but can you siege a Phoenix here, or do they need to back off?
I mean, they don't have that Dharmic Pillars. I thought it was because they were just resetting, and who cares? You know, not a big deal to not have it. But now that you don't have it, no Frenzy either, no beads for Baskin. Yeah, I think this is the right call. Back up, play it a little bit more safe. You don't have waves pushing in mid or left. You really want to have waves crashing on all lanes at the same time whenever you're sieging Phoenixes. Definitely the right decision there from the Hoofs to back it up and spend this gold in hand.
And you can see things like Magi's Cloak just locked in there for Baskin, so a good back for him. Makes it so that he's a little more safe without having to expend his ult, potentially those beads. And considering the way the engage has been going, should be up most of the time. Gamma's getting aggressive, and he's been the one really kind of driving that engage. Andenster has been using his ult more for survivability these last few times as opposed to starting up the fight. Primal Fury's about to start up. Phoenixes are exposed. Fire Giant's got 2.5 minutes on it. Seems like the playground is here for the Herculean Hoofs. They just have to decide where they want to go first. Down the slide, over to the swing set. The world is their oyster for them. Seems like it's going to be a grouping on left. For me, it's more of a question of do you get the Primal Fury first and then get aggressive, or do you get aggressive and pick that up as a consolation prize?
I thought you were gonna say, for me, it's a decision of, did it rain recently? Is the slide wet? Do I have to go to the swings first and let the slide dry off? I thought you were
Man,
gonna keep on
playgrounds
going
do
with
suck if it rains, though. Like, pretty much everything
Yeah.
you gotta sit on. Like, all the fun stuff.
Yeah, or like the monkey bars are slippery. Those things are already
Oh, you can't get a
dangerous.
good
Like,
grip.
yeah, that's gonna be trouble. The Hoofs decide to go for Primal Fury. Personally, Gore, I'm a slide man. I'm always going for the slide first. Swing is a close second for me, but yeah, I love a good slide.
I'm definitely more in the swings of things, but I didn't even think about monkey bars until you mentioned it. And just as we wait
Yeah,
for these
monkey
teams
bars
to
are big.
collide, I'll mention, I don't think I've tried to use monkey bars as an adult. I wonder what the difference would be now. Be definitely an interesting bout to see. It's an interesting bout here. We are used to seeing a 4-1 split, but not all the way over in right. Mask is going to outright solo Andy. Snoopy comes over here, but it's just to get some pressure. They're going to knock down this Phoenix like it's nothing. Mask, even in a position to get aggressive, does not quite get the stun, thanks to a little bit of movement coming down from Crimson. Gets him out of the engagement, but it's a 3v4 over here. Not for long. Look at the rotation. Mast is running through the Titan room right now. Gets spotted out because of that one. The minions are going to be there. Snoopy rotating around the long way. Baskin going to slap down some damage onto Aqua, and he's going to get credit for the kill on that as well. Phoenix on the left-hand side going to go down. 2 birds. Might as well kill him with 1 stone. Maybe going for the 3rd here, but no, they're going to pop the frenzy, go right on into the Titan room. It's a 3v5 for 20 seconds. The damage is coming down, though. It's all onto the Titan. Masked 1 sliver of health away from dying. But the Herculean Hoofs take control with that first FG, and they never let go.
Look, Mask finishes 1-0-5, but the 1 kill that he got was incredibly important. The solo kill onto Andenster on that right side Phoenix, and it was not close, by the way. Andy underneath his own Phoenix got 1v1'd easily by Mask, and then that opens up the whole game and makes a siege defense basically impossible. Aqua a little bit awkward on the relic usage. Maybe the Soul Laner not so used to beads Aegis, ends up dying with both of them up, and it ends up with the Hoofs finding game 1.
And a lot slower pace than what we expect out of the Winter Dogs here in game number 1. Maybe they'll pick it up in game 2. Maybe the Herculean Hoofs are going to be able to find themselves a solid set victory and continue their tear of the last couple of weeks. We'll have to find out all about that right after this.
Welcome back to the SCC North America edition with Fitch and Mifflin, and with the Hoofs finding a nice win over the Winter Dogs in game number 1. Miff, from where we were sitting, this seemed like the kind of game where the Herculean Hoofs were happy to play a bit of a slower pace and eventually overwhelm the Winter Dogs. It's always scary if you're going to go late and let Baskin have Scylla, and both of those conditions were fulfilled this time around. What was your read, though, on kind of the key that helped the Hoofs get this game?
It just felt like, to me, the Hoofs were on a leisurely stroll throughout this match. They weren't really pressed in the early game. It felt like the Winter Dogs may have tried a couple of times to find some sort of pressure on the map, but it never really amounted to much. And then from there, I mean, the clock at the top of the screen tells a story in of itself. Hoofs, 1 kill at the 10-minute mark, and they weren't even having to struggle for it. And from there, once they were transitioning into that mid to late game phase, which is traditionally where the Winter Dogs have struggled into the past, it's only gotten easier from then on. I think the damage charts also kind of tell that story as well. The Hoofs are not near the top of the damage charts. They weren't looking for fights consistently. Instead, when they did find a fight, they won it quickly and clinically.
Yeah, it was a lot of this. It was a lot of initiation from the front line, including Mast, and then Basket deleting someone, right? Not a whole lot of blows traded back and forth. More like these fights coming to a relatively quick end, and the Hoofs being on the upside of quite a few of them. And you saw in that first replay part of the problem. I mean, it starts off with the Winter Dogs going for an invade, and the Herculean Hoofs responding to it properly. Yeah, and then Meerkat kind of showing the turner is good. Is Fenrir just good, like kind of as a side note here? I mean, I feel like we've been seeing him at multiple levels of play, and he's just been doing well. I'll go ahead and let you talk about that a little bit if you just think maybe people should be playing more Fenrir.
I think Fenrir is in a very good spot right now. With bruiser items as you know, ubiquitous as they are inside the jungle, it means that Brutalize isn't really the I'm going to trade my own life for damage tool that it used to be. You can go for this stone cutting sword early on and then immediately transition yourself into a slightly more tanky build and just hang in there with the additional lifesteal that you get from Seething Howl. I think Fenrir is in a very, very good spot. And if anyone's beads are down, Ragnarok is always going to find you a pick.
Well, this is the story you were telling with this damage numbers, huh? Crimson with 20k, Aqua with 19k, Yuji with 13k, all of those very nearly eclipsing everyone on the Hoofs. Doesn't matter, it would seem, at the very end of the game. It's not about who found the most poke damage throughout the game or who was finding this inconsequential damage. The damage coming through from the Hoofs of this game was ending lives, and they moved on. That's the end of the story on this one. So it's not always about who's putting up those biggest numbers. You hear Aggro, and I hear you, Miff, talking all the time about relevant damage that you're putting in team fights, and pretty clear who had the relevant damage in this one.
Yeah, maybe Tsukiyomi does top the damage charts, but how much of that was just throwing his Kusari
he was
Gamas
bullying
out
Meerkat.
in lane, right? He was bullying Meerkat, but Meerkat was also getting the better end of rotations, was getting into those team fights a little bit better, and also able to utilize that healing, the only healer in that game. I think he finishes out that one with about 10,000 healing under his belt. Look,
Not bad.
I think that the Hoofs play their game plan properly. We said it on the desk originally that they were going to play for that mid game and then try and steamroll it from there. I think the Winter Dogs tried to win out the early, which has been their identity so far. So in Pisa B's game 2, we could see one of two things. Winter Dogs can either double down and try and win the early yet again, or they might shift up their strategy a little bit and try and match the Hoofs mid to late game prowess.
Well, as we hop into the picks and bans for game number 2, this Fenrir is still on my mind, Myth. I wonder if that's not something that the Winter Dogs want on their side, because Mast, and as you said, without putting a ton of effort in, was the best early game jungler in this game, right? I mean, he was the one fighting all the setup, and it's because it's so simple. It's the leap into a stun, and my mid's going to follow up, or it's the Ragnarok into damage, and my mid will follow up. Felt like the Hoofs, or not the Hoofs, excuse me, the Winter Dogs, were occasionally getting lost in terms of how they found that same execution on their own side, so maybe that's an easy way for them to try and find a way to get it started.
Winter Dogs do elect to take the first pick slot, which is interesting considering second pick has had a lot more success in Season 8, a pretty large win rate over there. I think it's about 65% over there in the SPL. Wow. But bans starting largely the same as we saw last time around. Maybe some slight shifts here and there. Chernobog taken off the table by the Winter Dogs. But this is the exact same thing we saw last time, isn't it? This Heimdall focus from them, even though Onher's still out there. It's just that relative safety, the CC immunity inside the ultimate, and the ability to transition into a crit build mid-game pretty easily. But I feel like you are just losing out on that pressure, man. Onher is so hard to argue against in Season 8.
He is. He's so strong right now. Sure, he doesn't have the global ultimate, but, like, Eventually, the game comes to you anyway in that late game form, but this is what banning the Chernobog does. And going into that first pick and taking a Heimdall, it opens up both of these picks. The Winter Dogs are able to strip away in game one, the Tsukiyomi by having it, and the Yanis by banning it. Now the Hoofs have both those strong tools in their own hands, which is a scary prospect for the Winter Dogs, even with Wukong, who has become prioritized as that #1 solo laner lately. Feels like maybe they gave up some tools that are kind of hard to compete with in terms of individual value in that Giannis.
The #1 soul laner inside the SCC, but King Arthur is still out there existing at the SPL level
He's
and
pretty
still
good.
somehow makes his way through all the picks and bans so far in both games. King Arthur just falls by the wayside. Scylla gonna round out the top three for the Winter Dogs, and yeah, on her as well. Okay, these guys play their own meta, all right? We're not worried about what Reddit's saying. Yeah, there's a lot of things that just go by the wayside, Finch. I like the top three from both squads here, though. It's incredibly strong insofar as team fight presence, and the Winter Dogs come away with a draft that I think should be able to fight more so inside of that team fight phase. If we see a reprisal of the pacing from game one, there's no way that the Winter Dogs just lose to scaling like they did.
Right, and this Serket should, I think, theoretically do a similar function what this Fenrir did. It should be relatively easily applied CC that sets up for a big mage, though it's Giannis this time instead of Scylla, and we all know that as much as Unstable Vortex hurts, and it does hurt and it's up all the time, it's not the same as getting hit for 1240 instantly by I'm a Monster. As long as they can find that mid-jungle synergy the same way they did back in game #1, if this are catch jungle and not going to end up in that support position, but I think they'll be in a perfectly fine spot as the Hoofs take this chance to ban a ton of supports. Emir, Kumba, and Kepri alongside the Athena Silbic bans that were already there, all removed. So going to go a little bit deeper into the God pool here this time for the Winter Dogs. The Hoofs take a casual 7th pick Yamoja.
Yeah, way more worried about the Kumakarnas of the world, right? The Hoofs remove that one, and the Winter Dogs say, all right, well, no Scarab's Blessing allowed. Somehow, though, auto-attack heal, shielding inside the kit, creating giant walls, and also being able to just maneuver your team and the enemy teams makes its way through. Yamoja incredibly strong here. Gotta think that the Winter Dogs gotta be kicking themselves about forgetting about this one, letting it through. Robin gonna be the jungle pickup for the Winter Dogs, and that is early game pressure. When I think of Annister in Season 8, I think of Robin, I think of Thor, and then occasionally I associate him with Thanatos as well, and it's all about making sure that this Scylla is able to bridge her way into a couple of items so that he can pass the baton, Annister that is, at that 15 or so minute mark to let someone else carry the match.
And they should still be able to stand tall in that late because their backline is just so potent. And Xing Chen, a perfectly fine setup tool as the Hoofs now lock in Chiron, is something that Snoopy's certainly been playing throughout this phase. I mean, he even played it in some of his more casual games that showed up in this month in Smite. So this is just something he's been playing. So no big surprise this ends up with him, I wouldn't say. This does seem like in the end, though, Tsukiyomi solo Serket jungle. Is that your read on this too?
Yeah, I believe so. Tsukiyomi solo is much better at not only clearing waves, but also trading, just fighting in the lane. Jinku Bang, a fantastic ranged poke tool for Sun Wukong. Well, Tsukiyomi does the exact same thing, and then his auto attacks are also ranged as well. Just speaking on the Chiron for a moment, I think that we had a phase for the SPL waiting room back in week 1 where we talked about the relative value of Chiron in Season 8, and I think it still rings true. With Bluestone and Transcendence, you could just be a ability-based hunter that does buco damage. I'm talking ranged poke, the ultimate swinging for upwards of 1,000 to 1,100 in the late game as well. Death immunity in the ultimate state into a revive if you're able to pick up a kill. This Chiron pick, I think, is one that's being slightly slept on, but one of the weaknesses is how easy he is to gank. He doesn't have the best escape tools. That dash, so easy to interrupt.
Yeah, and someone like Robin gets on top of you quick.
Oh, yeah.
You know, maybe get even immune, getting knocked back, and can find the route themselves. Some good options for Andis during this one, and they're going to need him in game #2. Winter Dogs, Herculean Hoofs. Let's get it down to Gormizer in aggro.
That's right, game #2, and things look interesting coming into this one. We get the Serket picked up. Baskin back on this Yanis, something that I feel like for a little while was banned away from him. There's Winter Dogs scooping up some other picks. I think Aquarius Wukong seems to go hand in hand, but Crimson stealing away that Scylla this time around. Aggro, are you feeling a little better about the Winter Dogs composition compared to what we had last game, or was it more of a stylistic, I guess, play style, really, that they had that was causing them the trouble?
I think their composition is good in this game. I liked their composition last game as well. I just thought the Hoofs had a pretty good plan against it. You know, sustain up against poke makes sense to me. I do, as much as I like the Winter Dogs comp here, I do not like the Hoofs composition very much. It doesn't feel like there's a ton of synergy in these picks. I mean, their dive is going to be pretty solid, but I don't know who's really peeling for Snoopy on the back end. Gino, I mean, it should be able to theoretically, but it's very, very difficult with someone like a Robin and a Wukong. You got to hope that Baskin just isn't going to be in the traditional backline areas and that he's going to be playing more like an assassin on this Giannis, because the traditional backline zone is likely not going to go very well for the Hoofs. The Wukong Robin dive combo is hard to stop.
Well, there's been a lot of little skirmishes across the map. No big stuns yet from Gino. In fact, health bar is low for Gino and for Yuji there. You would expect anyone with Yemoja in lane to have a little more aggression on their side. It is that question, though. I had posted about Chernabog. I think it was a lot easier to answer for Chernabog. But we're in a pretty heavy crit meta. I'm actually going to pause that conversation. Lancaster looking for the loop around. Might be able to find Snoopy here. Doesn't seem to be the wiser of it. They go for Gino, though.
Nice
Lockdown,
knockback.
not going to be quite enough. A really good knockback from Snoopy. It's going to be a root, some damage, but not enough follow-up to find the kill. Andy finds this one a little wasted. Good mechanics once again from Snoopy. I was going to ask, as time goes on, I always ask myself, who is the killer on this team, right? Who's going to be the one that's picking up those last hits and finding it? Andy doesn't decide to back off too far. Going to root Gino just before, but no, not going to be able to get to the Riptide. Gino gets out of that one, and Snoopy turns it around for first blood. I don't care about the conversation I wanted to have. That was good play from the Hoofs.
Man, very close. I mean, you think that should have probably been a kill there for the Winter Dogs, but instead Gino able to sneak through that portal, and Gambit takes a tower shot.
Andy's still hanging out over here, but he's not looking for the gank I think that Yuji was hoping he was. Yuji left alone, the stun comes down. Snoopy, 2 clean kills, just a little off of the timer to get a double. And he does get the purple buff stripped away from him, but is it going to be enough? In fact, now with his positioning, is he going to be able to find anything? I don't know if this is where you want to be. He's getting some good damage onto Snoopy. That's going to stop the aggression onto him, but it's only so much that he can try to pull back here. Purple buff stripped away, but at the expense of his duo lane.
Well, yeah, Andy spent the entire last minute and a half to 2 minutes on this side of the map, and Mask is going to be able to leisurely walk over and take these camps on the right-hand side. I assume he also took those camps the first respawn because of Andenster's pathing. Andy gets only his own speed buff for golden XP on this right side of the map. That's the risk. I mean, you spend that much time outside of a lane. That was, what, 3 attempted ganks and 0 kills for the jungler for the Winter Dogs. Definitely not a great start for this Robin.
Well, he's trying to lock down Mask. Not going to work out well. Baskin Gino hanging around the corner. That's going to be enough to thwart you. Although, I say that, and I think that Andenster's going to back off for just a second, but he still looks for some damage. Gets a punch out there onto Baskin, but ultimately isn't going to be able to find too much on it. I mean, there's the aggression we were talking about from the Winter Dogs last time, although this time it's not really resulting in much in these first 5 minutes for them. If anything, it's kind of caused them a lot of trouble. And I look at this team and the way it scales in the late game. Yuji going in with his ult, forcing the beads out of Snoopy. Snoopy going to go forward with the knockback. Gamma joins the conversation, and it's going to be Baskin who comes crushing in just a little late to be able to find the kill onto Yuji, the unstable Vortex. But they do get the consolation prize. The support has nowhere to go. Baskin's going to get credit for that one. A huge ult and a big rotation from the mid lane from Herculean Hoofs.
Exactly what you want to do with that Giannis ultimate. The first use, you definitely want to be getting a kill on a side lane, and they do that. It's a little bit unlucky that Snoopy doesn't end up getting the assist, because that's the best case scenario, is they would have been able to get a bunch of assists and the kill onto Baskin. But either way, you're feeling good about the beginning of this game for the Hoofs. Definitely more so punishing the Winter Dogs' mistakes, I would say. More counter-punching than being the punchers themselves, but hey, it's working so far. I don't see a reason to try and push it. If the Winter Dogs are going to try and make these high risk, high reward plays, and they keep coming up in your favor, seems like a solid enough strategy to me. They're sitting pretty now, up about 1,500 gold in just 5 minutes.
I Feels like the battle equivalent of tripping and falling on your own sword, just several times in a row. None of them have been fatal injuries, but every single one of them has been more than you want to get stabbed by a sword, for sure. These things aren't, again, they're not spiraling out, but it is difficult to start to clap back. And that little bit of a lead, I mean, it doesn't lead to too much right now, just a little bit of itemization ahead for the Hoofs. But it creates the conversation. I was going to ask you this earlier because we talked about it with Chernobog. Chiron seems even more outlandish to do this on, but Crit, does it work for him? Like, is Snoopy just going to become this menace with this level lead? Is he going to be able to start controlling this lane, or is this what looks like about to be a gank from Andy going to end up causing him trouble? As Aquarius is going to get locked down over here on the right-hand side of the map. One more hit's going to do it. Meerkat gets that. Snoopy's safe on the left. So it's just another kill for them. I mean, is Snoopy just a sure thing that you can start putting this pressure elsewhere on the map?
Yeah, he's got a solid lead. It's not insurmountable for Yuji. I mean, Yuji's still close in the golden experience department, despite the 2 kills so far for Snoop. So it's not a horrible position for the Winter Dogs. I think the Robin still can gank this Chiron. He hasn't finished his beads yet, or his boots yet, rather. So it's still a fairly easy gank for him. Just a little bit surprised as look at Gamma waiting, but
wow,
immediately Mask gonna help him out. No beads used by Baskin, Understanding or Mask. Both of them had them, but no one's close to Gamma. That's a free kill.
Well, Snoopy just melted there. I was thinking was going to be able to use the Gorp for his advantage, but unfortunately not going to have enough. Crimson goes up into the ult to avoid getting any sort of CC knocked onto him. Masked, not Maskin. He comes crashing back down there after Yuji uses his ult. So ultimately, they finally clap back. They get a kill onto Snoopy, of all things, which is going to help control that duo lane a little bit better. After a red buff invade from the Winter Dogs, that time they finally get proactive and it pays off.
I like it. I like the aggressiveness from the Winter Dogs still. I mean, they're down, but they aren't out. Think that you'd hope that they're going to be able to find some better engagement throughout this game, and they lose Gamma in that fight. They lose Aqua on the right-hand side, but at least getting Snoopy, finding some lane to start putting some pressure, because now Baskin is pretty big in mid. He's going to continue to power farm. That's what Giannis does best. He gets all the farm on the map better than any other mid laner, so you'd expect that lead to continue to grow, if anything, or at least stay the same. You've got Meerkat ahead on this right-hand side. Tsukiyomi is easy enough to gank. I mean, he is still an assassin, but he has a lot of immunity frames in that ultimate. He has the purification beads up, and now he's got a shifter shield done. So I wouldn't be exactly chomping at the bit to gank that lane if I'm Aninster. That kind of leaves just Snoopy on this left side of the map, and he's the easiest kill they've got. So I wouldn't be surprised to see more of this. Andy moseying on over to this left-hand side.
Yeah, he's been spending most of his time over here, and let's let Mask kind of have free reign of the right-hand jungle. There's nothing up on that side of the map for Mask to do. Makes it a little safer for Andy to just kind of show face, make sure they know what's what. The red buff respawning here for the Hoofs. They lost the last one over there to the Winter Dogs. Same thing for that purple buff. But neither of the Scorpions have gone down yet. And, you know, the first few weeks of the SCC, it was the 10 to 12 minute mark for Gorp to go down over on the left side. Maybe taking a little bit longer for the right-hand side to finally be taken, but there hasn't been a lot of pressure from either of these teams. They were made easier. Theoretically, you can kill them. I mean, we've seen some teams take them at 5 minutes when they first pop up. It seems like Andy might want to start one up over here. Or he might just be caught out. There's 3 members of the Hoofs surrounding him here, and Gamma, they're going to be going for it. Portal going to be able to lock him down. One hit away, the jump from Serket to try and chase him down. It's going to be Mass that gets credit for the kill on that one, thanks to the ult tick damage. Now maybe getting aggressive on the Crimson, but he's under tower. I don't know if you go that hard for this one.
Too hard to lock down a Scylla with beads and ult and Sentinel still available, so good decision there to not go for that. I agree that I would have liked to see some more prioritization here onto these greater Scorpions as Yuji tries to turn and burn Snoopy, but Snoop absolutely dominating him in that trade.
Oh, there's the River's Rebuke as well, looking to lock Yuji down. You just used the Bifrost, my friend. There's no getting out of this one. I don't know that you needed Baskin's ult, but it comes ripping through as well from the mid lane. Just to get a little bit of extra damage, presence, portals, all of that on the left-hand side of the map. Purple buff invade after, I believe, what was a successful red buff invade as well. So a lot
Yep.
scooped away. Everything that the Winter Dogs had, I would argue, as an advantage a few minutes ago, has just been clapped back pretty heftily.
The lead is doubled in about 5 minutes. So 5 minutes in, it was 1,500. Now we're looking at a 3,000 gold lead. Looking more and more like the Winter Dogs are falling too far behind, but the XP isn't too bad. I mean, it's definitely not in a favorable position for the Winter Dogs right now, but sometimes we see these 3,000 gold leads and a 5,000 experience lead, or one lane in particular is just so far behind. That's not the case. The experience differential is spread fairly evenly throughout the Hoofs, so that's not a bad position to be in if you're the Winter Dogs. It means that if you get a numbers advantage opportunity that you'll be okay, or if you can just catch someone out and pick them instantly, then you're in a position to fight.
Everyone's just a little bit behind. As enhanced buffs on the left-hand side, I'm going to go towards the Herculean Hoofs. Potentially a gank here. Yuji, I mean, he's in a pretty safe position. Andy's over here in the neighborhood as well. You had mentioned the dive onto the back line. I think that's something that Snoopy has to be worried about. Even with Gino right here. It's a little stressful knowing that you could very well be just the ire of Andenster's eye. Instead, it's going to be focused at blue buff invade coming through. The Herculean Hoofs are willing to not get kills if it means they can strip away the experience. And you had kind of highlighted that it's not necessarily the end-all be-all just yet, but everyone's a little bit behind. If they keep taking these buffs away, then start being a much more massive divide. Is Baskin going to use the ult to juke out the ult from Crimson there? The I'm a monster. It's a little too late to catch up with the through space and time. River's Rebuke going to come down from Gino. Crimson now going to be the one who's locked down in mid lane. Going to be able to find the kill. One more hit will do it. Mast, credit for that one. The beads and Aegis burned from Crimson as well. That still is feeling a lot less safe.
And without that, I'm a monster doesn't really have that damage output. Baskin didn't even need to use a relic either. He just instantly ulted off the side. So trading ult for ult in that situation is so good for Baskin because he's sitting at full CDR already.
Gamma's going to look for a steal onto this Gold Fury. They're going to ignore the Gold Fury for the Herculean Hoofs and look for the kill. Mask is a little low, though. It's going to cost him his life. Yuji rotates in, gets the kill. Andy into the back line, putting pressure on the Baskin. Good portal gets him out of there. Snoopy and him definitely in danger. Andy going to overhand kick the masterful shot. The vision comes out from the sword. Doesn't look like they want to be able to get too aggressive. Baskin portals forward, more damage onto Andy. That's going to give them the zone they need. Meerkat starts up the Gold Fury, and the rotation from the Hoofs is going to complete. Gamma sticking around just to see if he can take it.
Aqua still hasn't even rotated. He started to a minute ago, but here comes Crimson, going to steal away the Gold Fury.
I mean, just clean at that. They get Snoopy to boot. Gamma goes down, loses his life. Crimson a couple of hits away, but so is Baskin. This is the battle of the cooldowns. Luckily, Gino is there to help out. So you trade out your mid support for your carry and the Gold Fury on the side of the Winter Dogs. It doesn't necessarily pull things back for them, but it does alleviate some of the pressure the Hoofs have been applying.
Definitely a win for the Winter Dogs to steal that away. Look at that damage that Meerkat just did to Andy. Wow, that was quick that Andenster changed his tune. That's a 3-level differential between those assassins, and Meerkat certainly winning the battle. But to get that Gold Fury away on your side, definitely important. The Winter Dogs just need marginal victories, because otherwise it's looked a lot more like this, where the Hoofs can kind of do as they please around the map.
They walk in, have no issue there. Meerkat in a little bit of trouble here in mid lane. Probably the first time he's really felt the true pressure throughout this game. He's going to be able to walk just back just fine under that tier 1 tower in mid. That's, I guess, the other point, map update. 1 tower has fallen here. Herculean Hoofs lost their solo lane tower. Everybody else still has one standing, although Winter Dogs are definitely feeling the pressure there in mid and in solo. Question of whether or not they can start clapping back at a little more than just neutral objectives. That was a really good play from Crimson. I mean, we had mentioned the ult being used just prior to a River's Rebuke a few minutes ago. Have for him to avoid some of the damage, but comes back in time to showcase one thing that is missing from the Herculean Hoofs, and maybe not as massive as if you have something like a Merlin on your team, but they don't necessarily have the same cleanup and capabilities of securing these neutral objectives as what Scylla brings.
No, that's one of the reasons why Scylla has been so prevalent in the meta, both at this level and the SPL level, is that no one is really out securing her very effectively. I mean, the Cuckoo Khan that guys like Big Man Tings have pulled out, you know, the E-set, those are the only picks that can really contest.
Crimson forced to play it safe here. Don't have to use any relics or his ult to get away from that one. Gamma might be a different conversation. A good Riptide jump over. Gamma's going to keep him safe. There's going to be the through space in time from Baskin to make sure he gets the engage. Aquarius so low, but makes it onto the Somersault Cloud. So going to be able to get some of that healing. Stay alive to fight another day. That might be more than you can say for Crimson right now. The lockdown's looking to come through. He's going to use the beats to try and get away from this one. Sentinel going to be used. Ult going to be used. Aegis has been used. And it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, he's going to get taken down. Andy looking for a clapback. Rivers Abuse going to come through to try and lock everyone down. But Gamma and Andy going to run away from this one. A lot of pressure from the Herculean Hoofs on the right-hand side. They're still chasing down Andenstern. He's going to be at 1/3 HP. That stun just off the mark. Forces the ult. Looks like that's going to be the back off from the Herculean Hoofs. At this point, I mean, do they have enough space to get an FG, or do they just go for Pyro?
No, I don't think they can't go FG because Baskin has no mana. Gino low on Omi as well. No ultimate for him in order to instantly regen it. So this is the right call. Gamma gonna try and steal it away with a tick of Furious Roar. Unsurprisingly to all, that does not work out.
I like the aggression on the side of the Herculean Hoofs, kind of matching what the Winter Dogs' pace was for the first 4 minutes, except unlike the Winter Dogs' first 4 minutes, they're finding a lot more success in terms of the kills department. A lot of focus that came down to that left-hand side, not paying off for the Winter Dogs just yet. And they're going to be able to get some consolation prizes. The Greater Scorpion that spawned on their side of the map, enhancing some of these buffs for them. Never enough to really clap back harder. Fire Giant still up on the right-hand side of the map. Oni Fury, I should say, going to be spawning over here on the left-hand side pretty soon. Aggro, that lead didn't really grow as much as I thought it would. After the last couple of minutes, I kind of expected to see a lot more gold from the Herculean Hoofs beyond the conversation of 5,000 plus, but even when it comes down to the experience, it's not that massive. In fact, UG has 2 levels on Snoopy.
That's exactly what I was about to say. It's because Yuji did not rotate for that fight. He spent the whole time pushing left. He got both towers, stripped away the entire left side jungle, and got a lot of farm, whereas Snoopy grouped up. You know, he's splitting a wave here and there among 3 or 4 people. So he is going to end up being far behind in experience. So now it's up to Yuji. I mean, the proverbial ball is in his hands. He's got to try and make a play because he's the only one who's significantly ahead of their counterpart. Wouldn't surprise me if the Hoofs try and play this a little bit slowly. I mean, they're really not on that much of a timer here. They can afford to let Snoopy catch up a little bit and then come to these fights.
Crimson has ult. Gino's just getting eviscerated there.
Okay.
Don't need any ults to lock that one down. He is just CC'd to death. Had beads. Just opted not to use them at any point in that. Oni Fury started up. Crimson has his ult. This is the point I was going to make. Good secure on the side of the Scylla. Make sure this one can go their way. Doesn't seem to be using it. Crush, Sikkim gonna be enough of a combo. Aqua's low. Somersault Cloud forced out there. But ultimately, that's just clean win for the Winter Dogs. I mean, there was no clapback.
Man, really, really surprised that the Hoofs have really lost this lead so quickly, and it was just a good split push where the Hoofs didn't get enough out of their grouping on the right-hand side. Maybe a little bit premature on grouping his 5. If you're not going to be able to have the DPS to deal with something like a Fire Giant on the back end, you've got to be able to get a little bit more than what they did. Otherwise, the Winter Dogs can bend but not break. That's exactly what happened right there.
When the kills read 12-4 for the Herculean Hoofs, you expect the gold lead to be somewhat resembling the same thing, right? There's like 300-ish gold that separates these two teams, if even. In fact, it's starting to bounce back in favor of the Winter Dogs, not just after that Fury, but after all the buffs and kind of neutral camps they've been able to pick up. That plus the experience is on their side. And while they still have a little bit of a deficit, I think, in the jungle and mid, definitely seems like they've been able to catch up and play pretty even compared to what the Hoofs have. Confusing is the best way I can describe it. I just don't know how we got here. The Herculean Hoofs with so much control earlier on haven't really been able to pilot that lead into anything constructive for them just yet. So now at neutral ground, needs something similar to last game, an early Fire Giant. Granted, they did it, what, 18 minutes the first time last game? It's going to take a little while to get it online this time around. They have the ults to do it. They're in the position. They're looking for blood. They're going to start it up, at least to try and bait out someone like Gamma.
They've done that successfully, though. It's going to cost them a couple of ultimates in order to stay out of Gamma's reaches, but Krim took about half his HP, and Gamma's still caught in a bad spot.
He's incredibly low at this point through space and time. Connects, not as much damage as you would have expected, but it's not going to stop Baskin from going in on that one. The damage is looking good, but Gamma's still kicking. Finally, they take him down, but it costs Gino most of his health bar, and it's their Aquarius looking to collapse in on the Emoja. They find it. Tier 1 tower on right goes down, but support for support. The Hoofs are definitely on the retreat now. Andy goes in, looks for some lockdown. Baskin takes a good chunk of his health. Aquarius going deep into the backline. Snoopy's looking low. Somersault Cloud comes through, and Fuji comes in for the plays you were looking for earlier. Uses that lead to his efficiency. Is he going to be able to find anything more? Meerkat's one hit from dead. Someone's got to be able to lock him down. It's going to be Aqua with that cudgel. Slamming the ground, turning that into a 3-for-1 trade. The Winter Dogs turning this game around in the blink of an eye.
Just way too much of a commitment on the Gamma. I mean, sure, you kill him, but it costs you 4 ultimates in order to do so, and puts the whole team wildly out of position. The right side tier 1 was still up when that fight started. Snoopy had to commit some HP in order to tank it up and kill it, so that his team actually had a viable escape route on the back end. Just bad target selection there from the Hoofs.
A little early there from Baskin. That FG wasn't anywhere near as low as they had thought it would. They took a little while for the Winter Dogs to get on this FG. It's taken a little while to secure it. No one from the Herculean Hoofs going to be around. And just like that, in the blink of an eye, it was 12-4, so it's now reads 13-7. The gold lead is in favor of the Winter Dogs. They're in a good position. 3 towers standing, one Phoenix exposed for the Herculean Hoofs. I'm starting to run out of things for the Herculean Hoofs to do. I mean, where do they start to fight back? Do they just wait for the Phoenixes and try to defend under that?
No, I wouldn't give up tier 2s. You give up the tier 1 and mid, that's never worth defending up against the Fire Giant. It's just not worth enough gold for you to potentially lose the game on. You don't want to give up a free 3,000 gold, though, in the form of both of these tier 2 towers in mid and right. So I would be defending those in this instance. The problem is that Snoopy still is so far behind on this Chiron that early grouping really set him behind, and it's been constant fighting ever since, which is good pace setting by the Winter Dogs. You don't want to let the enemy ADC slow the game back down and catch up, because your ADC already did that portion of the game all by himself. So I like this call from both sides. Don't be scared to siege here if you're the Winter Dogs, but the Hoofs can't afford to just give it up for free.
Yeah, they're setting themselves up. Mass just backed, though, and if they caught that on the side of the Winter Dogs, that might be a sign for them to get aggressive in a 4v5, but it seems like they're going to be playing a little more patience. Gamma goes in. Gets a little bit of a clap down onto Gino. A lot of damage coming from Yuji. There's going to be some CC, but there's the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel combo into what Yuji had waiting alongside Crimson. Damage galore. They get rid of Gino without having to invest too much. This tier 2 tower now forfeit by the Herculean Hoofs. They back down under the Phoenix with its 4v5. Dangerous territory.
Still didn't get the frenzy off either there for Gino. I'm not sure what he used beads on, but I can't imagine it was as important as that Whirlwind of Rage and Steel, because you have to have beads for that if you don't have CC immunity in the kit. Definitely a waste of a relic a little bit earlier on, and that ends up spelling his certain doom.
Gamma goes in to get a little bit of punk. Aquarius is deep in the backline, taking way too much damage, but the Somersault Cloud saves him out. The Phoenix goes down. It looks like the Winter Dogs are going to be able to run this one forward. Meerkat's incredibly low. Gamma kind of hovering around half health on the other side. They're going to be backing off. They get the Phoenix. It's just get out alive, maintain Fire Giant. Snoopy wants to get aggressive. Some shots running down mid. Baskin maybe too deep here. Yuji going to get isolated, though. He's all by himself. Can he get through the crystal? The answer is no today. And that's a good kill to pick up. And now Third Time in Space comes ripping through. They want to close the gap. They want to continue this aggression on the Hoofs. They just have to play catch up, and they're running so fast on the Winter Dogs. It's a heavy commitment, but they're under the tier 2 now. Baskin's super low. Forced to back off here, but Reverse Rebuke under the mid Phoenix. Mid tier 2 still standing. Look to be getting aggressive, maybe too aggressive here for the Herculean Hoofs. It's what they bit off
Yeah.
too much last time. Now they're just going to try to clap back with a tier 2 of their own.
An ambitious chase there from the Hoofs. Let's put it that way. They were hoping that the Winter Dogs would, for some reason, become possessed and turn around and try and fight them. But of course, the Winter Dogs not going to do that. A great ultimate from Snoopy. He hit all 5 members with at least one of the shots, which meant that his masterful shot hit all 5 members. He did so much damage with that ultimate that I understand why the Hoofs didn't want to let that fight go. It's the first time that Chiron has felt super impactful in one of these team fights, and Snoopy's getting close. I mean, he should have enough for Deathbringer here. He does, so he can finish that. Still not able to finish the Ornate Arrow and catch up to exactly where UG is in the build, but at a strong enough point now that I'd imagine they're going to feel fairly safe to fight. Let's check out the pickup for Baskin. Doesn't go with that Pendulum of Ages instead. Is that an alternate timeline that he has? I believe it is.
Wow.
It's going to be fun to watch how impactful that is in this game. Maybe he could be a little bit more greedy with his purification beads, or not worry about throwing them away, because if he gets one shot by this dive on the other side, he's got time to revive and hope that his team can help peel him.
Now, there is that caveat at the end, right? Once every 6 minutes. Usually once is all you need with an item like that, though. That's going to be, I'm going to call it, a competitive for Season 8. That's the first time we've seen that one picked up, maybe the second time if it has been scooped up before. So not something we're seeing often, or at least that I'm used to seeing. Excited to see what it can do. Yuji may be a little too far forward right now, though. Rivers Rebuke not going to be able to isolate him. The Tier 2 tower looking to be defended, and just flying all over the place is Meerkat sent up through the realms by this Heimdall. He's going to be in a 1v1 kind of isolated deep into the backline. There's going to be the I'm a Monster, though. Snoopy just deleted off the board. Crimson with a huge impact this kill. Meerkat still isolated and now running away from what is a collapsing 4 members. But Yuji left alone. His back didn't go off in time. They're going to be able to get that kill. Meerkat might lose his life for it. It's going to be a 1-for-2 trade. Still favoring out the Winter Dogs here with pressure on the left or the right-hand side of the map.
Man, that fight was so awkward on so many different levels. I mean, Yuji is way too far forward. He didn't have relics to start that off. Nice blink in onto Gino, but Krim may have stayed a little bit too long. Mask gets him, and not even close to dying to the physical damage on the other side. He is tanky up against these physical members with that spectral armor and that void shield. I don't know how Snoopy gets hit by a freehand I'm a Monster without his Aegis up, but that ends up happening too. I don't know, man. Awkward fight for both ends.
And ultimately, what could have been a comfortable lead, and I believe was a 2-for-1 favorable trade for the Winter Dogs, has since transitioned to a 3-for-1 or 3-for-2 trade, favoring maybe the Herculean Hoofs a little bit. In fact, they're going to be starting up the Fire Giant right now. Snoopy's going to be making his way back from base. Baskin, of all people, is doing the zone onto Aquarius, keeps him occupied with the portal, has him about half health, and Bird Form's out of there. Aggro, this feels like it's going to be free.
Yeah, it is. They've earned it. I mean, both Krim and Gamma still dead for a significant amount of time. That's Scylla off the map, so you're able to get that one pretty easily. Right as your mid Phoenix spawns, all of a sudden it's looking like the Hoofs are back in control of this one.
Tides completely shifted there. That Tier 2 and right. That shows the difference as well. I mean, if you remember, that little bit of health taken off the Tier 2 took them more time to get, or Tier 2 and mid, to be specific, took more time to get than the entire tower with the Fire Giant buff there on right. They get the Pyromancer. Ultimately, you know, you blink and you miss it. You closed this game out 5 minutes ago thinking, well, actually, you closed it out 10 minutes ago, you think the Hoofs are going to win. 5 minutes ago, you think the Winter Dogs are going to win. Well, now I guess you close it out thinking the Hoofs are back in a position to try and find the win here. And so as such, I've stopped predicting where it's going to go. We're on an insane roller coaster between these two teams. A lot of pressure, I think, on the Yuji. You had highlighted it earlier. Doesn't have necessarily that level lead anymore. The only big discrepancy is technically Gino being ahead of what Gamma's bringing, but that's not going to play a huge, heavy role, I think, into the next few minutes. So anything that they had on the Winter Dogs that was maybe assisting some of those big fights earlier on disappeared from them. It's a question of pressure. With that Phoenix weakened already in mid, Winter Dogs just need one fight, and all of a sudden they're right back into this.
And they've shown that they can do that pretty easily, whether or not it's through the Hoofs making mistakes or the Winter Dogs making excellent plays on their own accord. They've been able to punish pretty effectively in this game. Their Phoenix Siege defense is okay. I mean, you've got Scylla, which is always kind of difficult to deal with because she has so much damage and a lot of it is over the wall, so you end up feeling like that's going to be problematic for them potentially. But the Hoofs have these gap closers in the Circuit and the Giannis and the Chiron with his damage over the wall and the poke damage coming from Meerkat Tsukiyomi as well. All of those are going to be problematic to deal with as well.
Well, there's going to be a little bit of taunt and some damage onto Aquarius there, thanks to the Circuit, but he's not going to be able to lock down a lot. Andy's going to be the one getting aggressive deep into the line onto Snoopy. Uses his ult. Doesn't get any of the relics out there. Really good relic control from the Herculean Hoofs to not stress too much about what Andy's going to bring to the table. That's the 4-1 split. Aquarius defending versus Masked, whereas everybody else for the Hoofs and the Winter Dogs are over here on the left. Phoenix taking a little bit of poke, looking like they're going to get aggressive as Gamba is going to go in, but River's Rebuke and reply leaves him a little isolated. The double jump gets him out of there cleanly. He uses his ult to do so. The blink as well. Takes a little bit of damage on the back end, now about half health. But the Phoenix, that's the important part. It goes down. A minute left on the Fire Giant, and it looks like the Hoofs are rotating to mid.
And even though it's not the Guan Yu from last game, they still have some sustain in the form of this Umoja. Gotta use that all-in damage a little bit better, but Krim might have been caught.
Yeah, he's going to be isolated, uses the ult. The Aegis keeps him going for a little bit. The damage finally collapses there from Mask. Cost a lot. Meerkat's low in the back line, getting some poke back. Yuji is the one who's in trouble this time around. Mask with a double kill is able to secure that. The Phoenix falls in mid. In the meantime, Titan exposed, and now it's going to be a much easier fight for them. They don't have a mid laner, no carry to fight up against. Andy is the focus for some reason. It's not going to take them long to burn that one down. They get rid of Andy. Gamma, Aquarius in the backline, looking to pull attention away. Portal comes through from Baskin. It looks like Aquarius is going to be the next one to fall. Titan fully exposed, minions coming in through mid. There's a 1v1 going on in the jungle with Snoopy and Gamma just off the mark as Baskin. Seems like they're taking the time. They get the deicide. Crimson's up in 18. But that's going to be the Titan, and that's going to be the set.
Really impressive work from Gino on that scene. She's the one who bumps Crimson out of position. Baskin finally gets some value out of his alternate timeline, so we've said that we could do it. Impressive stuff from the Hoofs towards that last end of the fight, but you see where the struggles have been at times for this team, where that game probably should have been much cleaner, should have been much easier for them. Yeah. Instead, the Winter Dogs, and credit to them, made a lot of really good plays and got themselves back into it, but ultimately not quite enough.
There were a lot of moments, I think, for both teams there where the conversation is, man, if this was a little more collected from you, it would have been easy to secure and an easy win for you. So, much like you said, longer fight than necessary. But at the end of the day, even with some style there, dying in the fountain, but not quite dying, keeping the goose egg in the death column, Baskin manages to maintain that, and the Herculean Hoofs find themselves that 2-0 that they were coveted. And that's going to do it for the SCC. Waiting room, SPL, all of that going to be coming on a little bit later. But first, they're going to break down this game on the desk right after this.
it ends up being a pretty convincing set there for the Herculean Hoops. They find themselves a 2-0. Had a pretty dominating performance out of Mask in the jungle, looking pretty good on that Circuit there, Myth. Was Mask kind of the end-all and be-all there for you on this one? Because the Hoops dominated the early game, things slowed down for a bit in the mid, then they went right back to dominating in the late. What'd you see here in this one?
I think Mask did a very good job setting the pace throughout the early to bridge them into the late, but you cannot slight young Baskin. I feel like every time we talk about the Hoofs, it comes down to Wooney Kim out of the mid lane. The portal setup was so strong. He was using those ultimates incredibly well to not only finish off kills, but to facilitate his team to chase out the rest of these engagements. But if I were to break down this set in one idiom, it's second verse, same as the first. It just felt like early game, maybe a little bit more so dominated than it was in game one, but at the end of the day, the timers still looked the same 30 minutes in, and maybe 15 minutes or so into the actual game itself. It just felt like the Hoofs had complete control.
It did, but look here in this 27-minute mark. Somehow, despite that kill advantage, the Winter Dogs had gotten back into control, and that's when, as you said, this Mass Baskin combo became so critical for them. They were able, after struggling in a couple team fights, to find a way back in and then close the game out in this exact fashion. So they will continue this kind of nice little streak they've been on here this last week or so, and looks like finally we're seeing this Herculean who show us the team that we knew that they could be. Now, that does mean that I have some questions now for the Winter Dogs. And if Andenster seemed to struggle in this set in Game 1 and Game 2, but there's no way you can put it just on him. This whole Winter Dogs team needs to find an approach where they've got a shot in the mid to late game. It feels like if they make it to that point and it's even, it's going to be pretty tough for them to win with the way that they're currently orientated.
Yeah, we used to consider them the early game specialist team, the squad that is or should be able to blow you out in the first 6 or so minutes and then use that lead to transition themselves into wins. Worked a little bit for them last year, but this year has been a little bit harder for them to find their footing inside of that style. Instead, I think it really is going to come down to a complete shift in identity here, man. I want to see these guys come and work on that mid game, work on that late game, even shift up the drafts for them as well.
Well, let's go ahead and take a look at how the NASCC is looking as a result of what happened with these games earlier on. We'll get those standings up there for you on the screen in just a moment. It means now the Herculean Hoops are moving up a little bit. Winter Dogs are going to continue to struggle down there at the bottom of the league. It's them and Fishies still struggling to move beyond one win. But the Hoofs now trying to line up and set their targets on that second spot. Remember, in the NA and EU SCC, the top 2 spots are what's going to be critical as we get closer and closer to the end of this phase. So that is where the Hoofs have to set their sights. And the Joes as well, they can string together a couple of wins. Remember, some critical matchups going to be happening tomorrow and Sunday. Pandemonium, you're definitely going to want to watch them play tomorrow, even up against Just F6, where I think Pandemonium should be a bit favored. And then Sunday, we'll see if Fishies can find a way to upset the Artisans and put a little space between them and the Winter Dogs we just saw drop down to that 1 and 5 position, Myth. So you all know that SPL is next, but before that, we're going to have the waiting room. We break down all kinds of stuff about the SPL. We give our recap and give you some good stuff to look forward to coming up to this very next week. So basically, it means there's nowhere for you to go up until this 1 o'clock. Make sure you check out the waiting room into the SPL, and we'll be bringing all that to you before too long.